Mark Ellison liked slow mornings more than anything. He was a retired human veteran who now lived on a quiet mining moon far from busy planets. Most days, he woke up late, made a simple breakfast, and sat outside his small metal cabin watching stars move across the sky. He enjoyed silence, warm coffee, and doing nothing important. After years of serving in space missions, he felt he had earned a calm life. But the moon he lived on was old, and many structures were even older. Some had been built before humans even arrived in this system. Mark never cared much about them. To him, they were just rusty towers, half-broken machines, and abandoned tunnels from past miners. He only fixed something when it sparked loudly or ruined his peace. One day, the old signal tower behind his cabin started blinking in the middle of the night. The flashing light kept him awake, and he sighed as he walked out with his tools. He did not want to fix anything, but he wanted the blinking to stop. The tower stood tall, leaning slightly to one side, covered with dust and wires. Mark grumbled as he climbed up the shaky ladder. He opened the panel and saw strange symbols glowing faintly. He had never seen these symbols before, but he didn't think much of it. He just wanted to stop the blinking and go back to sleep. He touched one of the glowing parts with his glove, hoping it was a loose connection. But instead of stopping the blinking, the entire tower lit up with bright blue lines. A soft hum filled the air, rising higher and higher, like a giant machine waking from a long sleep. Mark stepped back in surprise. The ground under him vibrated. The air felt heavy, almost charged. The light spread from the tower to the ground, forming thin lines that rushed outward across the moon's surface. It looked like a map of energy veins glowing in the dark. He scratched his head. Well, that's new. Deep inside the moon, a hidden mechanism responded to the signal. For thousands of years, it had been silent, sealed away and forgotten. Now, it activated with a loud pulse that echoed across the galaxy, far beyond human space. In distant star sectors filled with ancient civilizations, powerful beings felt the shift. Mark did not know any of this. He only knew one thing. The blinking had stopped, and he could finally sleep. So he went back to his cabin, made sure the door was locked, and fell asleep instantly. But the galaxy was now awake. Far away, inside a glowing nebula shaped like a giant dragon curled in the stars, 5 dragon warriors felt a sudden energy pulse. They were not dragons like the ones from human stories. They were tall, scaled humanoid with long tails, sharp eyes, and armor that shimmered like hot metal. Each belonged to an ancient warrior order that protected lost systems and old star secrets. Their leader, Commander Riser, stood on the bridge of his ship as the readings flashed before him. The beacon of the sealed star system was active again. He narrowed his eyes. Only a chosen being or a direct threat could activate it. The system had been closed for thousands of years. The idea that someone had opened it now was shocking. "We must go," Riser said. His voice was calm but firm. "Something has awakened what should remain asleep." The other 4 warriors, Terran, Valok, Mara, and Shiren, prepared their starships. Each ship was shaped like a long, elegant serpent with glowing wings. They moved through space faster than light, following the pulse back to its origin. Meanwhile, Mark slept peacefully, unaware that 5 powerful alien warriors were rushing toward him at incredible speed. Around his cabin, the glowing lines on the ground grew brighter. Machines under the surface pushed up bits of metal, like an old structure trying to rise again after ages of silence. When Mark finally woke up late in the morning, he stretched slowly and walked outside. The glowing lines were still there, running far across the landscape. He frowned, rubbed his eyes, and wondered if he was still dreaming. The air felt warmer than usual, and he heard strange, repeated clicks coming from beneath the soil. He did not panic. He had seen many weird things during his years in service. But this was different because he had no idea what he had turned on. Mark walked toward the tower, hoping he could turn everything off again. But when he touched the panel, the symbols reacted and formed a pattern around his hand. The wind rose suddenly, swirling around him like it recognized him. "Oh, great," he muttered. "Now it likes me." In the sky above the moon, something bright flashed. A long, sharp shadow crossed the horizon. Mark looked up and squinted. 5 huge ships were descending, their glowing forms slicing to the clouds like falling stars. He sighed again. His peaceful life seemed to be ending right in front of him. The ships landed with soft tremors that shook the soil. The doors opened, and the 5 dragon warriors stepped out, tall and strong, their armor shining under the moon's pale light. They walked toward him with slow, careful steps. Mark had seen many alien species in his past missions, but these warriors looked different, older, more powerful, more serious. Commander Riser stopped in front of him. His eyes glowed faint yellow. "Human," Riser said, "you have awakened an ancient star system. Explain how." Mark blinked twice, looked at the tower, then back at the warriors. "I just touched a blinking thing," he said. The warriors stared at him in complete silence. Mark wished he had stayed in bed. But the ancient star system had chosen him, and nothing would ever be the same again. The 5 dragon warriors stood in front of Mark, their tall shapes blocking the weak morning sun. Their shadows stretched across the dusty ground, sharp and long, and Mark felt like he was facing 5 walking mountains made of metal and scales. He tried to stay calm, but he could feel his heartbeat thumping in his ears. Commander Riser took a slow step forward. His armor shifted like liquid steel, and his yellow eyes watched Mark with the focus of a hawk. Mark had met many types of soldiers in his life, but none looked as ancient and disciplined as these warriors. Taryn, the youngest warrior, moved beside Riser. She tilted her head as she studied Mark, almost confused that a sleepy-looking human might have awakened their law system. "He does not look powerful," Taryn whispered. Mark sighed under his breath. "Thanks." Riser raised his hand to silence her. Then he spoke in a deep and steady voice. "Human, this system was locked for thousands of years. Only a chosen one, or a great danger can open it. What did you do?" Mark pointed at the old tower behind him. That thing started blinking. I didn't like the blinking, so I touched something. And now everything is glowing and humming. That's all. The dragon warriors exchanged glances. Mara, the healer of the group, stepped closer. Her scales were a softer silver compared to the others, and she had a gentle way of observing things. She scanned Mark with a small floating device. The device chimed softly. "He carries no special energy," Mara said, "but the tower reacts to him." Shiren, the quietest and most serious warrior, lifted his head toward the sky. "Something ancient has chosen him. The system does not respond to machines or power, only to living touch." Velok grunted. He was the strongest of the group and had deep red scales. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. "So this lazy human wakes what our ancestors feared? This is foolish." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Hey, lazy is a lifestyle." The warriors stared at him again, unsure if he was joking or simply strange. Before they could ask more questions, the ground trembled underneath them. A deep rumble rolled through the land. The glowing lines on the ground brightened, pulsing like the heartbeat of something waking up. Far in the distance, a tall metal structure rose from the sand, shaking off dust as if it had been buried for ages. Riser turned quickly, alarm flashing in his eyes. "The core structures are unlocking." More rumbling echoed. Another structure emerged from the ground, then another. Ancient towers of machines, shaped in curved designs that looked older than any known technology, rose one by one. The dragon warriors watched in awe and fear. Mark rubbed his forehead. "Okay, I definitely did more than stop a blinking light." Riser faced him again. "Human, we must understand what you awakened. If this system holds the power we think it does, the entire galaxy will feel it." Mark felt a chill. The last thing he wanted was attention from the entire galaxy. Taryn walked around him slowly, studying him like she was examining a puzzle. "You are different," she said quietly. "You do not fear us." Mark shrugged. "I'm tired more than scared. It's been a long morning." The young warrior blinked, unsure how to respond. Mara stepped closer to him. "We must take you to the command ship," she said softly. "We need to learn why the system recognizes you." Velok frowned. "We should not trust him yet." Shiren nodded in agreement. "He is unpredictable." Mark raised his hands. "Trust me, I am the least dangerous thing here. These glowing lines are the real problem." Riser thought for a moment, then made his decision. "We will not take him," he said. "We will stay here and understand the system with him. If it responds to his touch, he must remain." Mark groaned. He was hoping they would leave. Instead, he now had 5 giant warriors as unwanted guests. Terran looked around the dusty land. "This place is empty. Is this where you live?" Mark pointed at his small metal cabin. "Yep." The warriors stared at it as if it were the strangest building they had ever seen. Compared to their huge ships and shining armor, Mark's cabin looked like a broken box. Velok crossed his arms. "This is a weak shelter. It cannot protect even a hatchling." Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "It's not meant to protect anyone. It's meant to be quiet." Riser walked past him toward the glowing tower. He placed a clawed hand on one of the symbols. The markings brightened instantly, and the wind moved in a circle around him. He stepped back, surprised. "It responds to me, but slowly," Riser said. "But when you touched it—" Mark held up a hand. "Please don't ask me to touch things again." The warriors exchanged silent looks. They were proud, powerful, and used to controlling situations. Now they were following a sleepy human who had no idea what he was doing. Shiren stepped closer and spoke for the first time in a long time. "Human, the system may have chosen you for a reason. You must accept this." Mark stared at the glowing ground, then at the rising ancient towers. "Well," he muttered, "I guess my retirement is over." The dragon warriors stood with him, facing the awakening landscape together. Even though they did not fully trust him yet, something had begun between them, a strange connection, fragile but important. The arrival of the dragon warriors had changed everything, and the ancient system they feared was only just beginning to wake up. Mark woke the next morning to the sound of humming. Not normal humming, loud, metallic, and echoing like a giant machine warming up. He sat up fast, forgetting he had 5 dragon warriors sleeping around his cabin. Velok, who had been resting near the door, stood at once, his scales flashing red. "The system is calling," Velok said. Riser stepped outside and looked across the desert. The ancient towers that had risen yesterday were now glowing brighter. Lines of light ran along the ground, connecting the towers in a giant pattern that looked like a map. But the map was shifting, changing shape, as if waiting for someone to follow it. Terran pointed at the nearest tower. "The system is preparing trials." Mark blinked. "Trials? Like tests?" "Yes," Shiren said. "The ancient builders used trials to judge the worth of a chosen one." Mark groaned. Of course they did. The ground shook suddenly. Sand rolled away from the nearest tower, revealing a ramp that led underground. A soft light glowed at the bottom. "It wants you," Mara said. "Or it wants something from you." Mark rubbed his face. "If I don't go, the system will expand its call," Riser said. "Others will come, and not peaceful ones." Mark frowned. "Fine, I'll go, but you all are coming with me." The warriors looked at each other. Normally, the trials were meant for one being alone, but the system hadn't said they couldn't follow. "We will go," Riser said. "We will not leave you to face this alone." Mark felt a little relieved until they reached the entrance. The inside of the tower was enormous. The walls glowed with soft blue lines, and the air inside smelled clean and fresh, different from the dry desert outside. As they walked deeper, symbols appeared on the walls. Some moved like they were alive, rearranging themselves in smooth lines. Terran touched one symbol gently. It changed shape immediately, becoming a small hovering light. "It reacts to touch," she said. "But not like with you, Mark." Mark sighed. "Great. Everything reacts to me. I'm like a weird key." They arrived at a huge round chamber. The ceiling shone like a star-filled sky. In the center of the floor was a wide circle with rings of light spinning around each other. Before anyone could speak, the rings stopped spinning. A deep voice echoed across the chamber. "Trial 1, Endurance of Mind." The floor beneath Mark lit up brightly. "Why me first?" he muttered. But the trial had already begun. The glowing rings rose around him, forming a bubble of light. Riser tried to step inside, but an invisible barrier stopped him. "Mark, Terran called. Stay calm. Trials are meant to test, not harm. That doesn't make me feel better. Inside the bubble, the room around Mark changed. Suddenly, he was standing in endless darkness. Then lights appeared, forming shapes, memories, fears, moments from his past. His years as a soldier, the battles, the people he lost, the things he tried to forget. The dragon warriors watched helplessly as Mark's eyes squeezed shut. Sweat formed on his forehead. He is facing his mind, Mara said softly. Only he can pass this. Mark took slow breaths. It's not real, he whispered. Just keep walking. He moved forward through the dark memories. Each step made the shadows break apart. He kept going, refusing to stop, even when the images became harder. Loss, pain, and loneliness. But he kept pushing. Outside the bubble, the warriors saw the light pulse. He is fighting well, Shiren said. Finally, the darkness cracked and the bubble dissolved. Mark fell to his knees, breathing hard. Terran ran to him, helping him stand. You passed the first trial, she said. Mark wiped his face. I hate ancient systems. But the ground trembled again. Trial 2, Unity of Strength. This time, 5 towers rose from the floor around them. Each tower had a glowing symbol on top. Riser stepped forward. This trial is for us. The warriors each placed a hand on a tower, expecting something simple. But the symbols changed instantly. The towers released beams of light that connected to each other, forming a pattern that needed balance. Shiren frowned. We must match the pattern with our strength. Each warrior pushed energy through their towers. The beams shook. The pattern wobbled. Velok pushed too hard. Terran not enough. The beams flickered wildly. It's like tuning engines, Mark said. Balance it. Make it even. Riser nodded at his team. Listen to him. Work together. Match each other. The warriors adjusted slowly, syncing their energy. The beams steadied. The pattern aligned perfectly, and the towers sank back into floor. Trial 2 complete, the voice said. Mark looked at the ceiling. Please let that be the last one. But another tremor came, deeper than before. The final trial began by cracking open the far wall. A giant doorway appeared, showing a long corridor filled with floating platforms and shifting laser lines. Trial 3, the heart of the chosen. Terran stepped back in fear. This is the core trial. Riser looked at Mark. This one is yours. We can follow, but the system will aim for you. Mark stared down the dangerous path. Platforms moved like puzzle pieces. Light beams swept quickly, forcing precise timing. He sighed. Well, I've had worse mornings. Mark stepped onto the first platform. It wobbled but held. He moved forward slowly, using his instincts and training. The dragon warriors followed behind, cutting through obstacles when needed, blocking beams, and steadying fallen platforms. Halfway through, the path shook violently. A bright crystal floated at the end of the corridor, pulsing like a heart. Riser shouted, Touch it! The trial ends when you touch it. Mark jumped onto the last platform just as it tilted. He leaned forward, stretched his hand, and touched the crystal. Everything stopped. The lights dimmed. The shaking ended. The deep voice spoke again, softer this time. The chosen and his guardians have passed. Mark collapsed backward. I'm done. I'm sleeping for a week. The warriors gathered around him, proud and amazed. He had faced the trials, and the ancient system had accepted him. When the trials finally ended, the chamber lights dimmed and a quiet stillness settled over the ancient system. Mark sat on the floor, exhausted, breathing slowly. He looked like someone who had just finished running for miles in the desert. The 5 dragon warriors stood around him in silence, each wearing an expression he could not quite read. It was not pity. It was not worry. It was something closer to respect. But Mark didn't notice it yet. Riser stepped forward first. He placed a hand on Mark's shoulder gently, which surprised Mark because Riser's claws were sharp enough to cut steel. But his touch was careful. You showed strength that many warriors do not have, Riser said, and you face it alone. Mark shook his head. I didn't face it alone. You all were here. We were here, Marah said, "But the trial of the mind, that was yours. No one else could do it for you." Mark sighed. "Guess that makes me lucky then." Taryn stepped closer. "It makes you brave." Mark blinked at that word. Brave was not what he called himself. He thought of the years he had spent avoiding trouble after leaving service. He had wanted peace, quiet, long naps, and no responsibility. But here he was on an ancient star system, dealing with shining platforms and fire-breathing dragons. It did not feel like bravery. It felt like terrible luck. They walked out of the chamber together. The giant doors closed behind them with a soft rumble. The sun outside was bright, and the desert wind felt cool against their skin. The towers they had seen earlier were now dimmer, resting again after the trials. Mark stretched his arms and groaned. "I need food. And sleep. Mostly sleep." Shiren laughed softly. "Your strength comes from simple needs." "Hey," Mark said, pointing a finger. "Simple needs keep me alive." The warriors exchanged glances. Their eyes shone with interest. They understood strength in battle, power in fire, honor in duty, but they did not understand someone who fought using stubbornness, humor, and sheer refusal to give up. The group walked back to Mark's old shelter, where he kept a small campfire ring and a few supplies. It wasn't much. It barely counted as a shelter at all, but it was his home. He knelt by the fire pit and began rebuilding a flame with practiced hands. Riser watched curiously. "You create fire without power?" Mark chuckled. "Yes. Humans did this long, before we had machines." He struck the flint, and sparks flew. Soon a small flame rose. The warriors leaned closer. Taryn's eyes shone. "You bring life to stone." Mark blinked. "It's just fire." "To us," Marah said softly. "Fire is sacred." Mark froze a moment, staring at the flame. He suddenly felt less like a lazy veteran and more like someone holding a living treasure in his hands. While the fire warmed, he pulled out a pot and poured in water. The 5 warriors watched him like he was performing magic. He added dried herbs, bits of ration, small pieces of desert root he had collected earlier. "What are you making?" Velok asked. "Food," Mark said. "Human stew. Very simple." Riser frowned. "Food from nothing?" Mark shook his head. "Not nothing. Just what I have." The stew heated slowly, and a warm smell filled the air. The dragons eyed the pot carefully. "Try it," Mark said when it was ready. Riser tasted it first. His eyes widened. "This is warm and strong. Comforting," Taryn added after her taste. Marah nodded. "It is like a gentle flame." Mark snorted. "It's literally just stew." But he smiled all the same. Sharing food was something he understood. It felt normal. It felt human. And the warriors seemed to appreciate it deeply. For them, food symbolized trust. After they finished eating, Shiren sat beside Mark. "You passed the trials. But today you passed something else." Mark raised an eyebrow. "What? Cooking class?" "No," Shiren said. "You earned our respect. Truly." Mark blinked. It was the closest any of them had come to saying such a thing directly. Riser stepped forward. Many warriors faced danger with strength. Few faced danger with both strength and heart. You did both. Mark rubbed his face, embarrassed. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Marah said. "Not anyone. You." The desert wind carried their words softly across the sand. Mark felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had never wanted to impress anyone. He had never wanted followers or honor or praise. He just didn't like walking away from problems when people, or dragons, needed help. Taryn looked around the desert horizon. The ancient system accepted you. And now, so do we. Mark stared at them for a long moment. 5 dragon warriors, strong, skilled, proud, standing in a circle around him as if he were one of their own. "I'm glad you're with me," Mark said quietly. Velok nodded. "And we will continue to be. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Mark leaned back against a rock and sighed. "Then first thing we face is me taking a nap." The warriors laughed, a sound that echoed through the desert. They finally understood him, not as a chosen hero forced into trials, but as a human who fought in his own way. And in that moment, They respected him fully. The morning after the trials was calm and bright. A soft wind moved across the sand, and the ancient towers glowed faintly, as if resting after all the energy they had used. Mark woke slowly, still tired but feeling lighter than before. He sat up and found the 5 dragon warriors already awake, standing in a half circle and looking out at the horizon. They turned when he stood, and Riser nodded in greeting. "A new day begins," he said. Mark stretched his arms. "Yeah, hopefully a normal one. No more trials, no more crazy ancient puzzles." Taryn shook her head gently. "The ancient system has accepted you, but it has not gone back to sleep. It watches." Mark sighed. "Of course it does." They began packing up the small camp. Mark moved slowly, still a little worn out, but the warriors helped without saying much. Shire unfolded the blankets. Murad gathered the water containers, and Velok lifted the heavy supplies like they weighed nothing. It felt strange to Mark, this quiet teamwork, this gentle patience. He was used to doing everything alone. Now he was part of something bigger. When they were ready, light shined from the nearest tower. A beam shot into the sky, forming a shape, an image of planets, stars, and far-off routes. The ancient system was showing something new. "What is that?" Mark asked. Riser stepped closer. "A map." "Of what?" Mark said. "Of everywhere," Mira whispered. The map showed paths through space, lines of light connecting worlds Mark had never seen. Some lines glowed gold, others blue, and one line pulsed bright white, leading away from the desert planet. Terran pointed to the white line. "This is the path the system wants us to take. It wants you to go there." Mark rubbed his forehead. "Why me?" "Because you passed the trials," Shiren said. "Because it chose you." Mark shrugged. "I didn't choose it." Mira smiled gently. "Sometimes destiny works that way." He looked again at the map. It stretched far, farther than he had ever traveled, even during his military days. But instead of fear, he felt something else, curiosity, a strange excitement, maybe even hope. "Are you coming with me?" he asked. Riser stepped forward without hesitation. "We are yours to stand with." Velok nodded firmly. "You earned our respect." Terran smiled. "And our friendship." Mark felt his chest tighten. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to people choosing him, not for orders or missions, but for connection. The map faded slowly, but its message stayed in their minds. They began walking toward the old landing site, where Mark had crashed years before. His ship was still there, half buried in sand, broken, but not beyond repair. He stopped when he saw it. "Wow, it looks worse now." Mira tilted her head. "Can it still fly?" "Not without a miracle," Mark said. Riser placed a clawed hand on the hull. "Or 5 warriors. They all worked together." Mark knew how the human systems worked, and the warriors had strength, heat, and energy abilities that made repairs faster. Velok welded cracked metal with his fire. Terran lifted heavy pieces with ease. Shiren crawled through narrow sections to fix power lines. Mira sealed broken pipes. Riser handled the navigation systems. Mark watched them for a moment. "You're making me look lazy." "You are lazy," Velok said with a grin, "but smart." Mark laughed. "I'll take it." By evening, the ship was ready. It wasn't perfect, but it could fly. The sky turned orange as the sun lowered, painting the desert in warm colors. They gathered at the ship's ramp. Mark looked at each of them. "Before we go, I should say something." All 5 warriors stood taller, listening closely. "I didn't plan any of this," Mark said. "I didn't plan to wake an ancient system, or meet you, or pass those trials. But I'm glad it happened. You changed something in me." The warriors exchanged warm looks. Shiren stepped forward. "And you changed something in us." Riser placed a hand over his chest. "We were trained for battle, for duty, for honor, but we forgot something important. We forgot trust. You reminded us." "You reminded us of heart," Marat added. "You reminded us of courage," Terran said. "And you reminded us of rest," Velok said, smirking. Mark rolled his eyes. "Yeah, okay." They boarded the ship. It hummed to life, stronger than it had in years. Mark took the pilot seat, though he wasn't sure the system trusted him fully. Riser sat beside him. You lead. We follow. Mark stared at the controls, then at the horizon. The ship rose slowly, sand swirling beneath it. The desert grew smaller as they lifted into the sky. The ancient towers glowed once more, sending a final beam upward, a farewell and a blessing. Where to first? Mark asked. Riser smiled. Anywhere the white path leads. For the first time in a long while, Mark felt ready for adventure. Not alone, not wandering, but as part of a new alliance. 5 dragon warriors and 1 tired human veteran, heading into the stars together. Whatever waited for them beyond the desert world, they would face it as a team. And their future, bright and wide like the ancient map, was full of new horizons.